Hi, my name's Mark, one of the pastors at Trillium. You probably run across Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. You probably have seen the building in a picture, you've heard about it at least. It was in the news a couple of years ago. A major fire destroyed a big portion of the building. They're rebuilding it now. The price tag is about $1 billion, I think. $1 billion. The cathedral, Notre Dame Cathedral, is one of the beautiful buildings of Europe. It has many rivals in other cathedrals, but it is a stunning creation. The building was started in 1163 in Paris, France. They had this ceremony. They gathered all the dignitaries. They had the King of France there, of course, and they had the Pope all the way from Rome. They had the Archbishop of Paris, the Mayor of Paris, dignitaries, and lots of onlookers from the city. They are all gathered to consecrate the ground, make it holy, and then lay the cornerstone. And I had a vision when I was reading about this. You know, after the cornerstone was laid, they all looked up. They all looked up, and for a moment, they were transfixed by the moment, trying to imagine what the building would look like when it was done. You see, the building was going to take 100 years to build. And in cathedral terms, that's really quick. The cathedral in Cologne took 300 or 400 years. The cathedral in Milan took 500 years to build. A 100-year cathedral was fast, and yet nonetheless, everyone that was at that event that day, consecrating the ground and laying the cornerstone, none of them would live long enough to see the building completed. And not only themselves, but their children wouldn't be alive, and likely their grandchildren wouldn't be there either to see the building completed. There were 4 kings of France and 12 popes who lived between the laying of the cornerstone and the completion of Notre Dame. How many mayors and archbishops? Who knows? Lots of people lived and died as the building was slowly taking its shape. Imagine you're a craftsman, been hired on to start building the cathedral in 1163. Imagine that. And you work away month after month, year after year, maybe a couple of decades in, and then maybe you retire, maybe you die, and you're done. And the building's not even close to being finished. You're not going to see its completion. Your children, if they take over from you, are not going to see its completion. Your grandchildren probably not either. As a craftsman, you're working on a project that you're not going to see to its fulfillment. I wonder what it's like to live in that kind of reality. Something so massive and so huge it goes outside of our imagination. We don't think in those terms anymore. Corporations think quarter to quarter, or maybe even month to month. Politicians think in election to election. Even in infrastructure today, who would begin a project that would extend out 100 years or 200 years? See, that's what's the challenge facing us with the ecological situations we're dealing with in the world. Because these are 100 and 200 year long projects. How are we ever going to fulfill them in the mentality we live in today? We tend to live in a world that's focused on the moment and the gratification of the moment, and the longer term projects, the longer term goals often are shunted aside. Jordan Peterson wrote in the National Post last week, and he said this: for true satisfaction, forget happiness and seek long-term goals. Forget happiness, which is often fixated on the moment, and seek long-term goals. Goals that will extend outside of your current concerns in the moment. Goals that will extend outside of your own personal concerns. See, we take up the responsibility of long-term goals, of really long-term goals that concern not just ourselves, but the generations that come after us. The people that extend outside the boundary of our lives in the moment. These are the kind of goals that bring true satisfaction. But the challenge is, it takes faith to embark on those kinds of projects, because we're not going to see them to their conclusion. So how do we know what we're doing will make a difference? And the answer is, in the objective sense, we won't know. We can't know. In the letter to the Hebrews, in chapter 11, there's a discussion about people of faith. They're called people of faith, pioneers of faith, who took up God's vision for the world and saw it only off as a distance for themselves, and yet nonetheless committed their lives to a project, to a goal that would extend far beyond their lifetime. People like Abraham and Moses and David and the prophets. A project, a plan that would take hundreds and thousands of years to fulfill. And yet they committed themselves to a project that would extend far beyond their lifetime, and they allowed their lives to be used for the service of a group of people who extend far beyond their own circle of interest. The goal they were given was to build a cathedral of love. That's the project. That's the long-term goal. But they didn't even get to see the cornerstone laid. That didn't happen until Jesus came on the scene. He becomes the cornerstone of the new cathedral. In his death is the cornerstone laid. In his resurrection comes the Spirit and the invitation to us to join in as craftsmen and craftswomen in building the spiritual cathedral of love, of perfect love, of holy love. We're invited to commit our lives to the long-term goal of God, which is to make heaven a reality on earth. And we don't know how long this is going to take. It could extend far beyond our lifetime, probably will. It might extend far beyond the lifetimes of our children and grandchildren. It may extend out hundreds or thousands of years. We may be contributing to a spiritual project, the spiritual cathedral that could take thousands of years to finally come to its completion. And yet, the invitation is as real to us as it was to the pioneers of faith who waited for the cornerstone to be laid. We have a chance to build or help build and make our contribution to the spiritual cathedral of love that will not only bring peace and opportunity to the world of the future, but will make all the difference in our lives in this moment.